Welcome to Education in the Community. I am your host, Reverend Robert L. Mcknight. Joining us today as co-host is Miss Lora Sall, and we are going to discuss this February, African American History Month, knowledge. That knowledge is the most important information one can gain. That knowledge of self is the most important knowledge. Thank you for taking time out to co-host this show. And as we were talking about the title of the show, that the most important knowledge is knowledge of self. I have some quotes here. And one of them is by Malcolm X. Now, if you look at number 5, Malcolm says, the slave master will never teach you the knowledge of self, as there would not be a slave-master relationship any longer. What is your thoughts on that particular quote by Malcolm, Sister Sall?
Well, certainly what it says to me is that when you know who you are, you don't allow other people to dictate to you how you should or should not be. And so when it comes to the slave master and bringing it on to today's system, slave master is in different forms today. People will treat you based on how they see you.
Wow.
And when you see yourself in a different light, your history, your power, who you are, then you will not allow someone to mistreat you, because you would feel better about yourself and therefore carry yourself in a way where just mistreating you will not be tolerated. Okay?
And so I hear you saying that knowledge of self, knowledge of one's history and culture is self-empowerment, that it increases one's self-confidence, improves your self-image, raises your self-esteem, and bring about a greater sense of self-respect. Because I think universally, no one is going to respect an individual or a people until he or she or the people respect themselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. There was a time when within our families, what we learned came from our parents, came from being at home. And there was a certain way we knew how to act when we left home, simply because our parents drove it into us that we don't act that way. You know how to act when you leave this house. Make sure you have yourself together. Well, at that time also, parents had a certain amount of appreciation for who they were.
Yes.
And passed it on to their children.
Yes.
And our family has to be a certain way, and our family didn't act a certain way outside this home. And so when you left home, no one had to be over you, because you knew what your parents had taught you at home. Now we have children raising children, and children who don't know anything about their history.
Yes.
Don't know about themselves, their family history or their cultural history.
Yes.
And so when it comes to teaching or passing it on to their children, it's a little hard to do that.
It is first taught one's history in the home. The culture is modeled in the home as well. Ron Johnson, who was in the forefront of the rites of passage programs that we hear so much of, Ron Johnson said that if you do not respect, if you do not understand your culture, you will never understand yourself. That it is difficult to understand yourself without some knowledge and understanding of one's culture.
And I believe that's why a lot of our history was removed from the schools, was not allowed to be taught in the schools. And then once it was allowed to a certain extent, then it started being watered down or removed from the schools. And not just our culture. There, the Hispanic culture in Arizona, they had cultural classes, bilingual classes that emphasized the Mexican culture. And a new governor came in and eliminated those classes from the schools. And yet they were needed. And this was a whole body of people who were coming to America, to Arizona, appreciating who they were because they were in those classes. Now, can you imagine what it would be like if more and more of our children, African American children, were able to go into elementary school and have a teacher that looked like them, teaching them about who they are, who their ancestors are, and who they can continue to be in this life, okay? Rather than teaching them that you aren't much and your only outcome will be to go to jail, okay? And so I believe that's true.
Yeah, but the problem is compounded for Africans in Arizona simply because they were never introduced to their history and culture. And in recent generations, at least the last generation, a generation and a half, the last 40 years, when they enter into the public school system, you need to get immunizations or they will not allow you to register for school. You need to be culturally vaccinated against the virus.
Yes.
That you will come under and have to sit under and been exposed to, that says you come from a people who have no history. They have not contributed to the culture.
Yes.
And so that's where we are. Other people come with their culture intact. But when we are introduced to that system, we do not have anything to defend us. And so as you were speaking earlier, you are taught, you do not have to be taught verbatim that you are less than anyone else. That need not be in the curriculum to dehumanize someone. But all you have to do is sit in a system for 13 years, and it can go all the way through graduate school in a terminal degree and never be taught anything positive about yourself, any contributions that you have made to world civilization, to the uplifting of humanity. But you know something about every other culture with the exception of your own, you automatically are going to develop an inferiority complex and begin to think that you are less. No one has to teach you that.
That's a powerful statement, because in addition to teaching that you are not as powerful as you are, eliminating your history completely from the books is also a way of impacting folks. And then when you leave that structure, school, and go outside of school, and you have your media and other forms of education showing you how crazy you are, not showing you positive things, then that is impacting your knowledge even more so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Simply because Robert Townsend said, the very talented young brother, producer, actor, all of the above, he said that he who controls images controls everything. Now, Malcolm said something else. Malcolm says history is a people's memory, and without memory, man is demoted to the lower animals. And so if you could take away the history of a people, you take away a part of their humanity, because it is your history that allows you to become a part and identify with the family tree of humanity.
Now, what do you say to the people who say, well, it is what it is. This is where we are today. How do you suggest people begin to learn their history when the system has been set up to prevent us from learning that history? Today, in 2016, how can people begin to learn?
Anyone who makes a statement like that, it is what it is, and they are a victim of it, in the words of the late Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, they become an agent of their own oppression. And they're in denial of reality. And in Psychology 101, you learn that denial of reality is a symptom of mental illness that will land you on a psychologist's couch. And so they must begin by having an Afrocentric psychological therapy session. Because they are unbalanced mentally. Dr. Naeem Akbar, in his book, Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery, talks about it. We need to undergo a process of psychotherapy. It takes you all the way back to the beginning. And if you go all the way back to the beginning of civilization, you're going to find people that look like you and I who were there at the beginning. And for our audience, I challenge you to pull up on the internet the Newsweek publication issue from January, I think, the 11th or the 18th, 1988. And there's a feature article entitled, "In Search of the Original Adam and Eve." It is based upon the research that was conducted, not because it make it valid, because our scholars documented it long time ago. But a group of European scientists, archaeologists, anthropologists, historians, etc., set about to discover the original Garden of Eden. And they found it on the African continent.
Yes.
They also found, literally, physically,
Yes.
the mother of civilization. And they concluded that what they call this black-skinned woman with black hair roaming the hot savannah was, by one rough estimate, the 10,000 great-grandmother of all humanity. But they concluded by saying, if we are to accept this evidence that civilization has its origin on the African continent, making it the birthplace of mankind, the cradle of civilization, he says, then we will have to go back and rewrite all of world history.
Well, they need to go back and do that anyway because it was misrepresented. It was written in a way to eliminate certain people, and the truth was not in it. And so they need to go back anyway. So why not go back and tell the truth?
And you have to go back to the beginning.
Yes.
Because as we state so often, in order to understand the present, any aspect of the present,
Yes.
you must go back to the past, and the past deals with history,
Yes.
and gain some knowledge of it. And once you're armed with this knowledge, it will give you a better understanding of what is happening in the present.
Yes.
And now that you can understand what is happening in the present, you're able to sit down and strategize and make plans about changing the future.
Yes.
But you cannot do that based upon where you are with no understanding of how you arrived there. This is why knowledge of self is the most important knowledge there is.
Yes.
Let me share with you this quote by Dr. John Henry Clark. Dr. Clark said, "History is a clock that people use to tell the time of day. It is a compass they use to find themselves on the map of human geography. It tells them where they are and who and what they are." That's the importance of history. You don't know where you are, who you are, what you are, without knowledge of your history.
Yes.
You're lost. You're lost. And in being lost, there is a Sumer legend that says, "What happened to the black people of Sumer?" The traveler asked the old man, "For ancient records show that the people of Sumer were black. What happened to them?" "Ah," the old man sighed, "they lost their history, so they died."
Powerful.
You see, because your history is vital to you as a person,
Yes.
as the roots of a tree is to the fruit of that tree.
Yes.
And to that tree. You could take a California redwood that towers, I don't know how many miles upward, sever it from its roots, just cut it, even with the ground, remove it, plant it in the most fertile soil, and within a short period of time, it's going to wither and die. The leaves are going to fall off. The bark is going to fall off.
Yes.
And it's going to begin to rot. It won't be good for anything, not even firewood, because without its roots, it cannot draw from the soil the necessary substance that it can continue to grow and to sustain itself. And the same thing is true with the people. Cut them off from their history, and within a short period of time,
They're going to die.
they're going to die.
So how
First,
do we turn
mentally,
it around?
I'm glad you asked, because it is possible to turn it around. One of the things that Dr. Naeem Akbar says, he says that it is possible, and I think it's on the back of your paper here, of your quotes. One of the things that he brings to our attention, that it is possible to reverse the destructive effects of slavery by looking to the strengths in our past and beginning to make plans for the future. It goes right back to the statement that I made. We must look to our strengths in the past. How did we survive? Look at the achievements, all of the notable accomplishments.
Yes.
Everything in math and in science and in medicine in literature. We gave to the world, and you don't have to take my word for it. Do your own research.
Yes.
It comes from the continent. And so we can look at that. We gave the world its first skyscrapers, the pyramid, 40 stories high. We built. And we have to look, how did we do this? With none of the computers, none of all of the massive and huge construction equipment.
Yes.
We lifted blocks that were tens of thousands of tons in weight. How did we lift them 40 stories?
I also understand there's a hole at the top of
At
the
the
pyramid.
there you go.
Where the light shines through that hole and goes right to the head of where the pharaoh is being laid to rest within that pyramid. And the precision is so precise that no one has been able to duplicate it or figure out how it was done.
At one time, a group of the world's best engineers, with all of their equipment and technology, went to Egypt to try and duplicate the building of the pyramids. The Japanese, and you do know they are the world's best engineers. And when they finished, the government told them, tear that monstrosity down. It doesn't represent anything. They could not duplicate it.
Yes.
But we did it.
Yes. But also, they tried to separate Egypt from Africa. And if you go to Egypt, you'll notice that many of the statues and things, noses are cut off to try to make sure you understand that these are not African people. So you don't want to see the full nose, and you don't want to see the truth about Egypt. Kemet.
Yeah, so they write books, Egypt and Africa. That's like saying Berkeley in California.
Yes.
But you have to understand, the first 12 dynasties were indigenous Africans. They were Nubians, the first 12 pharaohs. And then the Hyksos and others came from Asia.
Yes.
And then finally, toward the end, from Europe, when all the destruction took place. But the first 12 were indigenous African. And I think maybe 15 and 16 or 15 through 18, they regained that prominence. And, you know, when all of the great building took place, we were on the throne. But they will not tell you this. Yeah. They have the mummies of all of the pharaohs. They know when they serve. But yet and still, even in our religious training, when they talk about in Pharaoh's army drowned in the Red Sea, they don't mention which one. They tell you about Moses was the leader. They talk about Aaron. Who was the Pharaoh? Says, you know. Yes. You know, they say it was Ramses, but that's not fair. And how did they get his mummy if he's in the Red Sea? And so you have all of these things here that says to us that a piece of the puzzle is missing. And they do not want you, if you start off wrong, with wrong directions, you're never going to arrive at your proper destination.
That's right.
And if you do, you're going to be delayed. I was talking with someone who drove down to San Jose from Sacramento. And some way they missed an exit. They got back to Sacramento, but they went 100 miles out the way.
And that's where we are.
And that's where we are.
That's where we are.
we have been misdirected.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, join me. I know that we're approaching the end of the show, but a great novel, I want to share this with our audience. You have to order it from Amazon.com. It's a novel, cultural novel, entitled The Nubian by Dwayne Smith. You need to read that book, give it to your children, both male and female. And in the novel, The Nubian, the author Dwayne Smith points out a man without an appreciation for his history has no identity. Without an identity, he can have no direction. Without direction, there can be no purpose. Without a purpose, there can be no freedom. And without freedom, you cannot live as a man. Now, I want the audience to think about that quote. Meditate upon it as you gain additional knowledge of your history. And so, until we get together for the second part of this series, I am Reverend Mcknight, and this is
Laura Sall
saying so long for now.